Howdy reference getters. Now we have Pokemon Emerald, the crowned gem of Generation 3, the 7th mainline game, also known as Ruby and Sapphire done right. Now, in general, Pokemon Emerald has had a reputation of being an easy top 10 game in the series. Even then, some would argue for top 5. But more importantly, this game has had a fun identity of invalidating any real need to play Ruby or Sapphire at all. And for a game that I have previously stated was also an easy top 10 game, that's a pretty big statement to match. And now today, we'll see how this third improved version managed to pull that off. Here's your timestamps, and now let's begin our descent in how to properly and naturally improve upon an already solid game. So as just stated, Pokemon Emerald is a third improved version of Ruby and Sapphire. So we once again return to the Hoenn region, packed down with stuff that, I'll be honest, I don't want to repeat because it'll put you to sleep. So we'll just say it's the same thing, but better, as most aspects of the game have been improved upon. Like the region having a few of its locations adjusted for gameplay purposes, and all new areas for the main game and the post-game alike. Well, okay, fine then. What about the actual gameplay shenanigans? Well, the battles themselves have better quality and are more abundant, and double battles as a concept have a much larger front seat this time around. And while it's not a dedicated game for the concept, it's damn fine enough, as the abundance of double battles just generally help improve the game's identity. But why talk about identity when we can speak on new stuff? Other than selling you a third game to get around that wall of version exclusive legendaries by actually allowing you to get them all this time, there's a lot of other positives. You like this legendary trio? They got new puzzles because apparently sitting in front of a wall for 2 minutes was not entertaining enough. Well, how about new innovations? Now, we all know Ruby and Sapphire made abilities. Truly a great addition that only made the game better from all fronts. What if I told you that Pokemon Emerald took that and then went a step further, by adding secondary effects in the overworld to quite a handful of abilities that already had niche use cases to start in-game. Now, to say out-of-battle abilities didn't already exist would be misinformation. Just look at this Teletubby and Muck, for instance. So while Static could already paralyze Pokemon in battle, now it increases the encounter rate of wild electric types as an example of an ability that you would actually consider using for whatever nefarious deeds you might be getting involved in. For other examples, Check increased encounter rates on pressure and arena trap Pokemon, Q-Charm increasing the odds of finding a different gendered Pokemon, or breaking the Generation 4 games and nobody questioning the abundance of shiny Pokemon in the game or the lack of it. Better odds of finding a wild Pokemon with held items thanks to a Pokemon like Venonat, or you can make your Gardevoir actually useful, as Synchronize can make the wild Pokemon far more likely to share that Pokemon's nature, or just use a Natu. And to get these extra benefits, you just have to lead off this Pokemon in the front of your party. But of course, who can forget the best ability, Hyper Cutter, as it increases the cut distance on grass. Oh wait, I was supposed to be talking about actual use cases. Whoops. Now getting on towards some actual fun content, we actually see the introduction of multi-battles in the main game taking place here. Yeah, it's a one late game battle, but you can't tell me that teaming up with the champion isn't memorable or impactful in the game, especially when you can only choose 3 of your own Pokemon to bring into the fight. Essentially, this format is just a double battle, except your partner is AI controlled. Now speaking of the champion, you saw those air quotes, or a visual attempt at it. Emerald actually changed the champion this time around. Although I would say this decision is nothing spectacular, as the fact there's already a water type gym which is hindering this quality quite a bit. But hey look, a change to the game's identity. Emerald also gave us the series' second, but actually first true super boss in the series, since you don't technically beat the game until after you do Act 2 of Gold and Silver, which means technically that super boss is a part of the main game, but you know what, just ignore that for now. And this battle is actually genius, because it capitalizes on the change in the champion by just being the old one with higher levels to boot. Also, I just want to point out this fun little Pokemon, Deoxys. See, some would assume I've just completely forgotten about this absolute unit, but hey, I had to wait until now to mention its gimmick, because as with the Generation 3 games, its form was actually dependent on the game being played. Ruby and Sapphire had its completely outclassed form, Leaf Green had that immovable wall, Emerald got the definitive competitive go-to lead Pokemon, and then Fire Red got the best out of all of them. Truly an odd Pokemon with a gimmick that just screams, hey, give me $160 so you can see this thing's full potential. Or so you thought, as modern day prices for these games are just ew. But that was a little bit of a mess to get it across with our notable general changes and additions that really couldn't just fall into two sides of gaming and gaming after dark. And so with that said, we should adjust a little bit towards actually playing through the game. Much like Ruby and Sapphire, Pokemon Emerald is pretty good in terms of its replayability. Now obviously it helps because it's the same game, but better. But having the exact same regional Pokedex surely is not helping Ruby and Sapphire's case. But this is the most disappointing part of the game, because the Pokemon selection is very important to any game's identity, and having that massive overlap, which is just copy and paste to the games it's similar to, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. See, when you look at Pokemon Platinum, for instance, the Pokedex selection works wonders for its variety, as just one more Ice or Fire type was making a whole lot of difference there. But when there's more, it gets even better. Even Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon took this further with another 100 Pokemon added onto its regional Pokedex, and then the extras. But as for Emerald, they tried adding new Pokemon into the game, exclusive to the post-game. So you know, it's after the game has been beaten, which kills the entire purpose of adding new Pokemon. Although technically it does help you in completing the National Pokedex, because with help from Fire Red or Leaf Green, every single Pokemon ever can be obtained without help from the GameCube games, minus these two and the Mythicals, I suppose. But speaking of the National Pokedex, that's a fun little topic I didn't get to speak about in the Ruby and Sapphire video. So now we get to speak on it. It's just a list of every single Pokemon in the game, including those not natively found in it, and it's really nothing more. Truly, this is the greatest addition to the series, that if it ever dared to be removed, would completely destroy the community, even if it didn't matter, or came back, but also not really. And how you transition off that, I will never find out. So before that derailing, I was going to let you know that copying Ruby and Sapphire's Pokedex 1-to-1 is generally fine. Granted, its quality is pretty solid, minus the Ice type. Also, this game's main game Pokedex is 196. Just remove these 4 for post-game, and you are good. Oh yeah, and speaking of adjusting the game for a legendary, this game allows you to catch a level 70 Rayquaza right before the 8th gym, just in case you thought the game was too hard and you needed to break it in half with an extremely oppressive legendary. And because the game can be completely broken in half, we have to mention that this is a pretty hefty issue. Yes, I know, just don't catch it. Okay, what else? You're gonna tell me not to play a video game now? Alright. Moving away from the Pokemon, we go towards the level curve, and once again, it's pretty damn good until you beat the 6th gym where everything proceeds to fall apart, before it puts you in that endless thought of when the good old days really came to an end. Now, the pacing of the gyms is much better overall. Gyms 2, 3, and 4 managed to get a level increase, a huge 1 level increase. As mentioned earlier, the 8th gym leader was actually replaced, and thankfully his replacement got a whole 3 level increase, where it was previously just a complete and utter joke. But that's not even all, as the gym leaders ended up with more and better Pokemon on their teams, truly making their battles more tough. But back onto the level curve, we reach the best part, and it's the fact that the champion's highest level Pokemon is still level 58, meaning they did not actually manage to find a way to make it worse. But when you sit down and consider the massive increase in trainers in the game, it makes reaching that point take less time than it otherwise would, which is a pretty good positive. Now let's dig a bit deeper and see if the smaller battles have anything noticeably odd about them, specifically the absolute lacking of levels of the Magma Hideout Grunts right before the second Maxi fight. Big increase right here, followed by the Aqua Hideout Grunts. Yeah, the level curve here is just a little not thought out well enough. But of course, that's really all to the game's replay factors. Other than what, one extra backtracking run? One that you're not even hinted to go towards the shipyard after you actually do it? And no, silly, the rival does not have a fully evolved starter, because that is an illegal sin that will not be tolerated. But all around, it's more solid than it was before, and as we already know, that's what we call a direct upgrade. And now we reach the holy grail of Pokemon content. Truly a massive pool of gameplay shenanigans that you get to potentially indulge in. But first, let's quickly name off the stuff copy and pasted from Ruby and Sapphire with little to no change. And those would be the Game Corner, the Trick House, Secret Bases, Berry Growing, the Safari Zone, which actually gets an expansion in the post-game, as well as contests, which are all finally under the same roof. Mister, where's the Battle Tower? I want to hear you complain about it. Well, Buttercup, that has to wait for at least 2 more reasons. Reason 1 being that some of the stuff from Fire Red and Leaf Green actually made the cut. This being some multiplayer only cringe, some e-reader nonsense, and move tutors in both the good and bad forms. As well as the return of Trainer Hill, now packed down with actual terrain and double battles to make your speedrunning journey more of a challenge. Now luckily for me, this is where I talk about the new side content in the game. But I got lucky as there's only one new feature present, being the battle tents. But that is very much tied down to the game's memorable post-game, which means means we can speak on it now. Or so you thought, as we gotta speak on the other new piece of post-game content. After beating the game, the gym leaders can actually start appearing on the match call for a rematch. They have not just one enhanced team, but 4, and they have the potential of being able to be upgraded to double battles. And yes, I'm sorry, I waited hours of playtime waiting for a single rematch, and nothing showed up. So if you asked, and yes, somebody probably did, that is why there's no footage. Also, the new match call system blows, because every so often you just get the most nothing calls from trainers that you're not able to turn down. And to make matters worse, you can't even say no to registering the trainers at all. It's just a bear trap that punishes you for playing the game, which now leads us to the grand experience of the Battle Frontier. The Battle Frontier has 7 battle facilities, all of which allow you to earn currency for items and decorations, because having actual incentives are needed to make the battle facilities actually worthwhile. But speaking of the battle facilities, there's one last note to speak on before we get into it. The level restrictions, as 6 of the facilities have 2 level options. One that just caps at level 50, and another that'll scale to the level of your highest level chosen Pokemon. Listen, it's not perfect, but the open level rule's a damn good compromise. Okay, enough distractions. Let's dive into the battle facilities, and where else better to start than the Battle Tower. Ugh. Say it with me for the 6th time, despite not a soul caring. It's just a 7 battle gauntlet with nothing special going on. At least this time they fixed the leveling issues that the Ruby and Sapphire one had, so it's a little bit better. Alright, our next 3 facilities are all associated with one of the 3 battle tents, and are essentially diet versions of those facilities. So the one we'll touch on first was also present in Pokemon Platinum, as well as the Gen 2 remakes, being the Battle Factory. While this is also present at the Slateport City Battle Tent, this very cool hype and luck-based format does not allow for you to bring your own Pokemon, but instead you have to choose from a pool of 6 random Pokemon, and then you choose 3 of them while aiming for a win streak of 7 while potentially trading a Pokemon with the trainers you defeat along the way. Truly spectacular. Our next building makes a mini appearance at the Verdant Turf Town Battle Tent, being the Battle Palace. This place is a simple 7 trainer battle gauntlet, but the twist is you cannot select your Pokemon's attacks. You can only choose when to switch out. Truly making for a luck-based experience that can actually be swayed in your favor just by getting rid of attacks off your Pokemon. But I didn't tell you that. Shh. It's a secret. And finally, the last facility tied to the battle tents. This one in Arbor Town. This battle facility is referred to as the Battle Arena. The battling gimmick here is the fact that your Pokemon are determined in a set order and they cannot be switched out. Each battle will actually be 1v1s against a team of 3 Pokemon, and each little battle between each Pokemon can only last up to 3 turns before the judge butts in and calls someone out for having a skill issue. How cute. Cool, moving away from the battle tents, we continue down our train of the Battle Frontier facilities, starting with the Battle Dome. This is just a 16-man bracket style tournament. Enough said. Just from the idea alone, it's super mega uber hype. And surprise, that is the only gimmick. Nice and simple with nothing else to it. Cool, the Battle Pike is next. First off, this building is awesome, but secondly, this place is essentially a gambling problem, as you will go through halls with choices between 3 rooms, where the events that lie behind the rooms are all RNG dependent. Maybe your Pokemon will get status for no reason, maybe you'll find a room with wild Pokemon capable of ruining your entire day, or of course, trainer battles. How exciting! The best part is, it's a fun, luck-based endurance test. Finally, the Battle Pyramid. Okay, so imagine a battle facility where you have 3 Pokemon and you have to go through a dungeon while collecting items to battle your way through trainers and wild Pokemon to reach the end of 7 floors to complete the challenge. Honestly, it's pretty devious, and that's exactly what the Battle Pyramid is. But at the end of the day, that's the main gist of the endgame content provided by Pokemon Emerald. Truly a grandmaster in battling that no other game really matched. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy complaining, because oh boy, that is about to hit like a storm. As promised, a rant on the old EXP system and why it's fundamentally the single worst mechanic shared across the first 4 generations of Pokemon games. So first, what even is the issue with the EXP system? Well, the big issue is the earn rate. In general, it's too low, leading to instances where you get some immense leveling issues as your entire team proceeds to get underleveled as you're not getting enough EXP to be remotely on par with the boss trainers. In most of those circumstances, it's typically gyms 1, 8, and right before the Elite Elite Four. Although in Emerald's case, of course, it's Gym 7, 8, and of course the Elite Four. Only those three. And at this point, we've already stated how they made the level curve less bad due to an abundance of trainers. So we're gonna skip that for now. But here's the issue. The EXP calculation itself. As we're gonna get very technical here, as we don't have to explain the calculation itself. But surprise, I hate fun, so we'll do it anyways. So the EXP calc starts by taking a defeated Pokemon's base experience and multiplying it by its level before being multiplied by a number determined by whether or not the Pokemon you're using has a matching trainer ID as the trainer. And then another multiplier based on whether or not the defeated Pokemon belongs to a trainer or is wild. All of which happens before it gets divided by 7. And unless the EXP share is on or switching comes into play, this is correct. But if both of or either occur, the EXP share EXP is divided out of the EXP pool for each one present. And then the EXP from all the participating Pokemon is decided by dividing it amongst the Pokemon that were actually in the battle against the Pokemon that you just defeated. This is roughly, and I cannot stress this enough, roughly how the EXP system before Generation 5 works. Now, first off, that's a lot to take in. And second off, it answers a few questions on why EXP is so unnecessarily obnoxious to get in the late game, while being somewhat reasonable early on. But also another explanation pops up and how it explains the mid to late game leveling issue. As typically, you see a bunch of unevolved Pokemon get spammed on the evil team grunts, as well as a handful of the random trainers throughout the game. And their lower EXP yields are what's holding back what otherwise could have been a functional leveling system. But the real problem with the old EXP system is how it indirectly influences team building. Because think about it. Would you rather have 3 Pokemon that are properly leveled that can beat the entire game with minimal grinding? Or how about 1 to 2 Pokemon that completely steamroll the entire game because they are over leveled? Or 5 to 6 Pokemon on your team that are all under leveled and struggling because the EXP gain is completely tragic. What this does is it typically leads you to wanting to keep your team count to a minimum as to avoid having massive EXP issues that can only be solved via grinding. Oh yeah, level grinding. Also known as, hey, I'm just trying to play the game, but Daddy Game Freak is starving my Pokemon of levels, so I have to spend more than an hour of doing something that could be completely written off as filler multiple times during a single playthrough of a game. Of course, the amount of time you spend grinding is on a case-by-case basis for each game. The only times within the context of Pokemon Emerald that this really applies to is before the 7th gym and the Elite Four, as well as whenever you catch a new Pokemon. And yes, before Gen 5, this game had the best level curve, which is still annoying. Okay, listen, I know damn well RPGs need level grinding to an extent. Again, there's a lot of games that have that, but some of them don't have level grinding issues. So when it gets in the way that it'll influence you to not use a full team, or getting your team members earlier because the late game has a few underleveled Pokemon for some reason, or the item that's supposed to help you train Pokemon just spreads your EXP a little too thin. All it does is force you to double or triple your playtime just to finally be able to play the game the way it was intended. And hence for some is why it's written off as filler and why they'll just cheat in rare candies to skip the grinding process. Which is why this EXP system ruins the replayability of the older games. It's just one major headache, and the fact that it went 10 entire games completely untouched is a bit of a sin in itself. And of course, the biggest reason the older games are so hard to come back to, because half that playtime is just spent grinding rather than just playing the game. And due to ranting for 5 minutes, I probably lost the point of this whole rant for you. So we'll just summarize it now, just in case. But the issues really come down to the EXP yields being too low, specifically for the mid to late game, due to the abundance of unevolved Pokemon. The lack of EXP in general leads towards incentivizing using a smaller team of Pokemon rather than a larger team to avoid grinding, but more importantly, it just leads to bad difficulty. But on that note, I was initially going to have another piece of this rant where I disproved the misconception of accessibility of EXP leading to the game being easier. And while that's kind of true, being underleveled will immediately make the game harder, it's stuck as a misleading premise, as leveling issues and the time spent grinding leads to an unfair analysis where the actual difficulty and the team compositions and other determining factors are completely overshadowed because the game did not provide you enough EXP to justify some horrible level jumps. But don't worry, we'll have that rant eventually, but until then, let's just observe how Ruby and Sapphire's story got fixed. Good news, ladies and gentlemen, the story this time actually received adjustments of note that for the most part fixed the minor issues that bugged me about the story of Ruby and Sapphire. So from the beginning, it's fairly similar to getting the starter and yada yada, who cares? The game's narrative doesn't really change until the evil teams show up, as both of them are doing evil stuff. Never would have seen that one coming. But essentially the events being performed by the teams are canonized, now fixing the annoyance that was just the evil teams being equally interchangeable, leading them both to being equally disappointing and, more importantly, replaceable. So now, with the story roles in place, Team Aqua is just obsessed with theft. They do it about 5 times in the entire game, alongside taking over the Weather Institute and then later reviving Kyogre at the Seafloor Cavern. Meanwhile, Team Magma, on the other hand, does the nonsense at Mount Chimney with the meteorite that you can just take. Hey, don't steal things, that's illegal, my friend. Then they'll end up vanishing for a while before you show up unwelcomed into their base, as Maxie uses the orb to bring Groudon back to life, just before they stage a takeover of the Moss Deep City Space Center, in order to get some rocket fuel to detonate Mount Chimney in the sickest troll of the century. And with that, both teams unleash the apocalypse, with both Kyogre and Groudon battling one another in the most fair fight of all time. Listen, buddy, Groudon isn't stupid. He knows damn well it can just go primal and send that sardine flying. He's just trying not to hurt its feelings. After viewing such a beautiful sight, you go speak to Wallace, who's totally not the champion now, for some pointless reason, before you get tasked with climbing a tower and finding that thing your lady was looking for last night. Look at the shape of Rayquaza. It's a penis joke. Now laugh. But after this, the game kind of just ends the same, but with a different champion. The rival, despite one extra appearance, is still equally as boring and unenjoyable as they were prior. But who cares? Now we talk about the final change, which is an addition. Scott. He's just a guy looking for talented Pokemon trainers so we can take them on a sketchy boat ride. And sure, he doesn't add much narratively, other than stating your progress as a trainer, in a more obvious manner of what the Gold and Silver narrative was trying to be. So in the end, one minor addition, the fact they made the evil teams a much better piece of the game all around, which of course, how can we argue against it, is an improvement. And in the end, Pokemon Emerald, just like the games it was based on, is pretty damn strong within the series, easily coming out alongside some of the greats in the series. It took a game that already hit most of its bases and further built upon most of them. Story? Better. Trainer variety? Better. Battle format variety? Better. An actual variety of post-game content that's just not one battle facility? You bet, pal. Truly making this the definitive Hoenn experience, which says a lot if a remake exists. But the remake may have a handful of ups, but the issue is the amount of downs really hurt it in comparison. But hey, we'll get there in approximately 6 games, unless something else slides in the way of a perfectly good schedule among the mainline games. But it seems I'm getting ahead of myself. So how about my final thoughts? Of course, the big question, should you play Pokemon Emerald? And that is the freest yes for the foreseeable future. Again, the game is very solid, and alone it invalidates Ruby and Sapphire from the discussion, while working alongside Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for a wonderful contrast called preference. Now, as for a score, I deliberated for a while before reaching a fair conclusion of a rough 5.5 out of 10. Honestly, at this point, the score hardly matters outside of the ordering within the tiers. Yeah, I know, crazy how that works. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for watching. From here, a new journey begins. I look forward to seeing what the future holds, except for one thing. Next month's video of Gold and Silver. This is going to be an absolute travesty, and I hope you're there to witness it. So drop kick that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one.